In terms of the Dead's repertoire at this point, and now that you've been playing so much and have these big shows coming up, are there any certain periods of the Dead's canon that you're excited to revisit now that the Dead didn't play in their later years, or you kind of forgot about that? You've been really through these younger musicians or playing with some of your former band members.
If I forgot about them, I wouldn't know to talk about them.
You've been kind of reintroduced to, I should say.
Yeah, that's better.
Spring '80.
I like that. I like the Spring '90. It was really good stuff for me. And we relived. I did '72 with my band. A lot of it as much as you could do.
Yeah. Both of which were, very different periods for the band.
Yeah.
I mean, in Branford.
But I did with two different bands.
Right. Oh, for the Dead, I should say.
Right.
They're kind of like, nice little different bookmarks in the band's career.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Talk about meeting Branford for the first time and how he kind of.
I was speechless. I was intimidated talking to such a wonderful player, incredible player. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite musicians and will be John Coltrane, and Branford is up there with the top. It was like, he's one of those guys.
And Branford was brought as a guest to those shows, correct? Right, and then he ended up on stage, and the rest is history.
I'm not sure. The first time I think it was in Nassau Coliseum, and I'm pretty sure if he had a sax with him, there was some communication. Hey, you want to go on stage? And those things don't happen quite that casually. Here I'm just going to show up. I'm Branford Marsalis. You don't mind, do you?
I think you guys invited him on for a song or two in the first set.
Oh,
and then that worked out. So then you're like, stay for the second.
Where are you going?
Stay. Where are you going?
we do that now with Bill and the Kids. We had Robert Randolph come out, and then Dominic Lally, and both of them just worked out so great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Dom's interesting because he's famous in a kind of completely parallel but very different world, in the electronic and EDM world, although he does have roots in funk and jam bands.
Great player, man. He really helped us out in Denver. It was great having him on stand.
And Locken now.
Yep.
Yeah, and the Lock and Step All-Stars was kind of a precursor to some of your bands now. It really kind of had that repertoire feel of all these people coming in, and you did even have the dual stage jam going on there with, I think was it Yodo?
Yeah, Jason Hahn and Michael Travis.
Yeah. And it must have been interesting to kind of communicate, kind of not just across one stage, but across two stages.
I have a big giant monitor right over here.
So
taller than I am.
What kind of you're saying reminds me of the Wall of Sound days where you're sitting there with this huge system behind you. The first time you played with that, did you just keep turning around, being like, is this thing gonna fall on me the whole time?
Exactly right. The first time I saw it, we were playing in Reno outdoors, and it was windy, and I'm walking up, and there's nobody there yet, but sound check time. And I walk up and I see the center cluster, which was the vocal speakers, blowing in the wind.
Yeah.
And my drum set's right below it. I'm going, that really sucks.
That does not look good,
I don't have to be an engineer to know that is not what I want. So I made them buy 2 more winches and put them on the corner because it was a triangle, right?
Yeah.
So they put a winch on each side. But at first they only had a 1-ton winch holding up probably 4 tons or some ridiculous thing. Where the crew had to set all that stuff up, and it was just a monster rigging deal. You had to make a ton of scaffolding to put all these speakers on, right? And they were very happy when we stopped using the Wall of Sound.
Well, in true rock and roll fashion, if it helps you out at all, it looked so freaking cool.
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters, right?
And it didn't fall on anybody, so.
I got some of that stuff that vibrated off once or twice. I can remember hearing some good thuds. And, and no screams, thank goodness. The other thing is it sounded horrible.
Yeah.
It looked great,
which is the reason why I ran away.
It sounded fucking awful. They have all that sound behind you. The drum mics are getting totally loaded. Now there are no drums, right? They're gone. And you can't hear anything. And, Phil, for instance, had a stack of speakers for each string. He's playing a 4-string bass then. And stuff like that. We took it to the farthest limits we could. But the idea was cool, but it didn't work.
Right.
You can't do it that way.
Well, I think that's one of the great things with the Dead is you tried all these ideas, and if they didn't work, moved on to the next one.
Blame the crew.
Yeah, blame the crew. Blame Benjy. Well, you mentioned earlier in the interview, and
is it Wednesday? Yeah.
Then we could wrap up that you listen back to the Dead now, and you're like, we were a great band. While you were in it for those 30 years, did you kind of constantly think we were a great band, or you just never really processed the music that you were making at that point?
No, I processed it. You can't play music at that level and not have it affect you,
Right.
And some nights I'd go back and just go, wow, I couldn't believe what I got to do. Some other nights, maybe one song would save the whole night. And that was pretty cool, to save it from train wreck or falling off the cliff, whatever expression. I just remember, I don't remember specific concerts. I remember more just the general feeling about being really happy with the music and being good.
And Benj, did you go back to any specific shows that play for Billy to kind of remind him a little bit about the band's musical evolution?
When I first got there, I wasn't sure. I remember asking David Lemieux when I was doing a Rolling Stone piece if he thought that the band members listened to the Davis Pips, and he said probably not. He said he sends them to everybody, but he'd be really surprised if any of them actually listened. And in my naive mind, I was going, oh my God, like how could they not listen? But I get it, I guess. I mean, I don't go back and read stuff that I wrote, usually. So I get that, but. Although I have read Deal several times, but I got there to Billy's apartment, and on the floor in his living room was the Europe '72 box set, all disassembled, and he has the Spring '90 box set. And whenever when I went there, I listened to a lot of Grateful Dead as it is, but when I was in Hawaii, it was a strict diet of Grateful Dead. Which wasn't too much of a stretch anyway, and I was getting into everything, and every time Billy would get in the car. It was like sometimes it was. I think that he thought I planned it, but I never did. And it'd be like in the middle of an amazing, playing in the band jam or an amazing other ones. And there's one time I remember backing up. I remember when I was 16 years old, and when I was discovering Terrapin Station, and I would go with friends in a car. I've never told you this, but I would go with friends in the car and would be all high and happy, and would get to where we were going, and I wouldn't let them leave the car. I'd be like, we're listening to this. Well, Billy and I were going out to dinner with his wife Amy, and we were all of a sudden it was another one into a drum jam, and Billy's sitting there, and Amy and I were starving. We were late for dinner, and Billy sits there, and he's like, we're staying here, and he starts drumming along to it, and freaking out to it like you would when you're 16 years old discovering music for the first time. And that was genuine, so that was really cool to see. But yeah, I mean, we listened to Spring '90 a lot. We listened to '72 a lot, and any of the new CDs that come out, I pop them in my CD, and we'll listen to them on the way to restaurants and etc.
Yeah, speaking of the new book, it's in the new issue of Relix. We have an excerpt, and in addition to that, Benjy wrote our cover story on My Morning Jacket. And one thing that I think you talked about them, and I know you and I have talked about over the years, is how My Morning Jacket is kind of like a half a jam band, and that they have one foot in the jam band world and one foot in the indie rock world. And they talk a little bit about playing with members of the Dead and improvisation. And when you being someone so deeply involved on this diet of Grateful Dead, when you talk to the members of My Morning Jacket about the Grateful Dead, what did they say about both their own history with it and kind of what it was like playing with Bob Weir and digging into that music?
Interesting that it's been a while since I talked to them about the Bob Weir thing, but I talked to them recently because of the cover story, and they knew exactly what I've been up to with Billy, and they're very curious about Billy and talking about how much they love the Grateful Dead. And it's interesting because they're not a band that there are a lot of Deadheads like My Morning Jacket, but so there are a lot of indie rock kids, so there are a lot of heavy metal kids. They cross all these things. And what the band said, it was I think it was Bo that said this, but he was talking about how the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you will agree with this actually.
Wait, let's see.
Okay, well I'll get to my point now.
I'll tell you in a second.
The Grateful Dead, the Grateful Dead were the same band as the Velvet Underground.
They have the same name.
In some ways, and that's that. There's some spirit there. I know they were different bands. I know. You were never in a band with Lou Reed. I get it. but
I loved his music. Boy,
yeah, exactly right. And so that I think that was the point. Is that music is music at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I played.
I get away from genres. People try to ask me this or that, and I just say, don't think about it like that. Just think about it as music. Do you like this music? You like this music? I think when people genre-dize things, it takes away from being just a free spirit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
because what's the difference really between what a good jam band does and what a jazz band does?
Not much.
The tunes are different.
Yeah.
The notes are different, but what is the difference?
I mean, we listened to Spandrel, and I remember, trying to explain what Spandrel was to Billy, and us.
How exactly did you explain Spandrel to Billy? That's the question.
Well,
I'll tell you. I'm going to answer this one. This is my favorite one. You take a lot of acid, and you put on Spandrel in the car.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We were in Hawaii, right? And he's been bugging me, just bugging the shit out of me. Man, when are we going to take acid? You're famous for taking acid. I said, we're here to write a book. Finally, okay, Benjy, we're going to go up the mountain today. We're going to take acid. Right? And we go up the mountain, and I have this little bottle, of course. and I'm reaching back there, and it's got a dropper that has probably 5 hits in it. And I'm trying to just put one on his hand, but I'm driving like this, right? And I'm trying to get a nice hit out there, and it goes bounce, and the whole thing goes right in his mouth, right? So he got real high, and I just said, well, what the hell? I loaded mine up and took the same amount. Well, and then Amy, my wife, is she took a lot less. And she also took us on a trail that scared the hell out of us.
Scared the hell out of us. We thought we were going to die. Well, the thing is when you put the dropper in my mouth, you go, that's one drop.
You're in much better shape than I'm in.
You go, that's one drop for you. And I'm like, oh, he's being serious.
Yeah.
And then I said, seatbelt on. So, you know, on the other hand, I was like, I prepared for this day my whole life.
That was cool.
So we listened to Shabanda, and Billy freaked out about it. Again, like a 16-year-old kid discovering music for the first time. He's like, what is this? We came out, and it was the perfect soundtrack for that moment. And this is going back to what we're saying, how music is music. It was, you know, we're literally, Billy's driving us out of this jungle, you know, thing. It's at the end. It's at the end of the day.
Dirt road, little funky dirt road.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day. So you know, we're of a sober mindset, you know, and the music just transported us right back to the activities of the day, and it matched up with the moment. And I remember we out loud were kind of daydreaming about, wouldn't it be cool if this, you know, if a drums in space went into something with Spandrel, you know, and stuff like that. And it was, you know, there's a continuum there. Spandrel may be, you know, whatever you want to call it, trance or psytrance or EDM. It's music, and so is the Grateful Dead.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Good. Nice talking with you, man.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Led a kind of an unusual life. I was a 16-year-old kid when I started playing with the Grateful Dead. I was following my bliss. Jerry was the lead guitarist. I was the rhythm guitarist.
If you don't have an ego, you can be the best #2 on the planet, and that's kind of what Bob became. The
music was an adventure. The people were an adventurous group. You just had to see it to see it. Mine has been a long, strange trip.